New Mexico is in an interesting spot with respect to both recreational and medical marijuana laws. Medical cannabis has been legal for a dozen years now. It's amazing. The program languished under Susana Martinez, certainly. But Michelle Lujan Grisham was health secretary when it was passed, believe it or not. You might remember that, and is, of course, governor now. She's open to legalizing recreational marijuana and has convened a working group to look at other states' experiences. And how those two programs might come together is our topic here. And Michael, Colorado has both medical and, of course, recreational. The medical patients worry that their program is being trampled on by the booming recreational business. Should we be looking at that directly and saying this is a problem for New Mexico that is going to happen? We should figure out how to mitigate that kind of response. Is that the appropriate place we should be right now?
I agree with you. Mm-hmm. I think that what I see is you have all these varying interest groups looking at it to serve a number of purposes.
Right.
One is the medical aspect. The other is just for profit.
That's right.
And if it plays out as oftentimes has in the past,
mm-hmm.
I would predict we know the people who are looking at us as a from a financial perspective. Mm-hmm. already have resources and, and attorneys that represent their interests quite well, mm-hmm.
As
opposed to the users and the medicinal aspect. So I think they really need to look at it, have everyone at the table, mm-hmm. all interests represented, and that seems to be part of the process. Mm-hmm. But really need to, whose needs are we meeting? Who are we serving? And in whose best interest are we going forward and representing?
Those fundamental questions, exactly right. Mary, the group is planning on, the working group I mentioned on recreational legalization is going to do a series of public hearings around the state. They're starting next month in Albuquerque, early next month. But Pat Davis, the city councilor kind of driving this, has been quoted saying we don't have much time.
Right.
And I'm worried that, what he's talking about is actually the problem. Do you know what I mean? I can't quite see this all coming together by the next session.
Right. And that's exactly what happened in the session. Right?
Exactly right.
That's exactly what happened in the session, because there wasn't enough time to think about it, and there are all these issues. And we do need to look at there's 11 states where recreational is
mm-hmm.
legal. We need to look at what
mm-hmm.
those problems are.
That's right.
And in Colorado, one of the main problems that they have is they're allowing it to be grown in private homes. And so that's where your black market comes in, et cetera. That's what you've got to really look at.
Yeah, exactly right.
I address the
absolutely,
question.
absolutely you did. Jeffrey, this idea that Mary's picked up on is how do we separate the two, make sure everyone's needs are being met on the medical side especially? Yeah. Because we have information now of the 4 states out there that have both recreational and medical. It's pretty clear across the board the medical situation has suffered under every one of those states, and especially California. We got price spikes, loss of available plant, all that kind of thing. Can we pull this off in the time allotted to make sure both sides are treated fairly here, recreational and medical?
I'd like to kind of continue what Michael talked about, and I think there's a real interesting dichotomy between the profit piece, business, and the health application piece. Mm-hmm. I find what's interesting is, by the way, not every doctor or nurse practitioner is designated to say you can be issued this particular drug. Further, there are still, the science hasn't caught up to all the various diverse health applications that cannabis can provide. Mm-hmm. We know it can alleviate some dysfunction or pain with cancer and some of that, but there's opioid disorder, there's autism, there's lots of other health protocols where science doesn't know yet if it can help those particular ailments, if you will. So I find that kind of interesting as well. The other part of it is that we don't necessarily talk about enough is on reservations or rural New Mexico, access to the actual health, to cannabis in and of itself isn't there. It's kind of like the broadband issue. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're in Eunice, New Mexico or Aragon, New Mexico or on a reservation, you don't have equal access to this very product that can alleviate pain and so forth. So a lot of moving parts. No, I agree.
They want it. Can we just kind of pool some of our resources?
But health applications and access are something we need to really invoke in that conversation.
Let me add something in, I mentioned that the medical medical folks are taking public input right now. There's some changes that are being proposed. And they're proposing adding qualifying conditions to the medical marijuana program, certainly. But it's also bumped up the number of allowable plants for growers from just 450 to 2,500. Now wants to bring that down to 1,750. I see where they're working here. They know they have a problem with product getting for the medical. There's, you know,
Right.
they're running out too quickly. Is this the answer, though, as you're seeing it here? Are they on track here?
I wonder if they're going about the whole thing the wrong way. When I go to the doctor and he says, you have arthritis, he prescribes me a drug.
Okay.
I don't have to qualify to get that drug. It seems to me if we've accepted that marijuana is a cure for certain ailments, that a doctor should be able to decide to use it, a patient should get a prescription filled, and I don't know why the state has to qualify me to carry a card so that I'm marked in a way.
That's right.
So I wonder if you would get rid of some of the problems with medical shortages, et cetera, if people could just get a prescription that the doctor said they needed.
That's a very good point.
And if you think about the state by state problem, if it were legal, at least medically on a federal level, the shortage of markets, perhaps you could make enough money making medical marijuana for the entire nation, even if you couldn't make enough money in New Mexico versus California. So I think I agree with all of the panelists that we need to protect the patients who need it for really severe conditions. And we all know someone who basically concocted, and I don't think this is a bad thing because it helps them obviously in their life or they wouldn't have done it.
That's right.
But they've
That's right.
come up with some condition that meets the criteria, and as soon as it's legal recreationally, they'll buy it a different way.
That's right.
But that person isn't someone who needs the certain concentration, the certain type of edible,
right.
and things that really are going to make the difference between them being able to go about their life.
That's right. That's right. Interesting point there.
You know,
Yeah.
Gina, we need to
Yeah.
also be concerned about the integrity of the actual cannabis itself.
Yep.
Because if we have
There's a call
just
for that.
the
That's right.
if we have just
Yeah.
free-for-all folks just growing it and then providing it to the doctors who issue it, we have to be very careful about the integrity of the actual.
That's a
Good point.
Right.
Yeah, regulate
Quantity
the
versus
manufacture
quality.
and the
Right.
production,
Right.
but
That's right.
let the patients and doctors sort it out themselves.
That's right. That's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, so quantity versus quality, I
Yeah.
think, is what they want to focus on.
Yeah.
In your gut, Mary, are you sensing that we're concerned enough about the medical side as we're going into this conversation? There is a conversation happening.
I hope
You know,
so. I hope so. And just in preparing for today, just the conversation that if we go towards legalizing, then people are going to say, well, then I don't need my medical card.
Right.
I'll get rid of the medical card. But
That's
yet
right.
then that drives up the cost, and then it weakens weakens what they need. I certainly hope that's what the focus is. But for the past 8 years under different administration, you know, it was like don't ask, don't tell.
right.
You know,
That's
was
right.
really that was
Yeah.
what was going on.
laid
But
fallow.
now we've got a governor who has just a different perspective just because of her Department of Health background.
Sure.
So she really wants to bring this to the forefront. And so because of that, I do think that we are focused more on the medical
That's
aspect.
right. That's right. I think that's an interesting point you made there about her previous experience, because that's going to be her backstop point of
That
view.
is.
Once it lands on
That's the
her desk.
lens she's
exactly.
looking under,
Exactly.
is
I
under
agree with that.
Right.
I'd be inclined to take the time to do it right.
Okay.
I think that that's critical. I mean, to rush something like this that it has the significant impact on the community, it's best to take it slow, get it done in the right manner,
Couldn't agree
rather
more.
than to rush it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeffrey, interestingly, the national debate has some interesting faces. John Boehner, former Speaker of the House, is now in the marijuana business. He has an interest in legalization. And there's quite a few Republicans, even locally, here in this state.
White.
Sheriff Darren White, who
Darren
has a
White.
financial interest in the marijuana business now.
Sure.
What's the deal inside the Republican sort of milieu when it comes to legalization?
Well, obviously, I'm a Republican. I can't speak to that necessarily, but I know that, for example, capacity. If I'm already a producer in New Mexico, for example, I think
Right.
the threshold is 1750. Obviously, I'm going to want that capacity to be 5,000 plants
Right.
or whatever, so I can maximize my inventory to maximize profit. So. I'm not sure if that's answering your question, but
No,
that's
well,
clearly a fair question to ask. If I'm a producer, I want capacity to be 1750 to at least 4,000 or 5,000, if you will. But once again, you also have that other piece that if you have a monopoly, and then once again, though, are Michael and I going to get together and start growing cannabis because we want to make some profit? Are we really engineered correctly to bring that integrity level to medical standards. So, I mean, there's lots of moving parts.
If you live rurally, you might want to. That's the other point.
You're right, because there's
If
demand
you
there.
live,
That's right.
Absolutely.
you know. But
Back to your earlier point.
then
That's right.
overarching, what about the banking laws? You know, you can't.
That's true.
right.
The federal government says we don't want that stinking
right.
money,
So
so
it-
to speak.
That's
So
right.
it's a cash business then. I
Right.
That's right.
It is.
A little bit up against the clock. Sorry, guys.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's all
Yeah.
right. Look, find our Facebook page for this week's discussion about how to interpret what public officials say on social media sites, as well as this marijuana discussion.